I was 24 when a $900 million dinner walked into my section, the kind of night where the door to the private room shuts with a vault sound, and you feel the air change like someone turned up the gravity and forgot to tell you. I was supposed to be invisible, pour and glide and nod on cue. Then a quiet sentence in Japanese floated across a polished table and asked a question I'd been carrying in my chest for years. Is there anyone here who can see me? Yeah, that happened, and the room split like lightning you can't pretend you didn't see. We were on the roof of the Meridian in Chicago, glass on all sides, the lake down there, like black silk chandeliers that looked like winter hanging upside down a table long enough to seat a small city council. My manager Everett tightened my apron for me like I was a mannequin and said, "No mistakes tonight, Zuri. You're invisible unless they call you." And I said I understood because rent doesn't care about your feelings. Then they arrived one after the other, like characters taking their marks. Rika Tanamori, the founder of Orizu Dynamics, walked in first, silver hair, navy silk, no jewelry, no filler words, just presence, the kind that doesn't ask to be noticed, because it knows noticing isn't the same as respect. Her aide hovered a step behind, face patient, hands steady. From the other side, the swagger, Blake Harrow and Cole Vance from Helix and Biosystems. Blake all magazine height and half-grin, Cole with the jittery leg and watch that could blind you under the chandelier. Blake lifted a glass before anyone else sat and said to New Horizons like he was christening a ship and a press release. At the same time, Rika inclined her head. The aide translated. She appreciates the sentiment, and the dance began. If you've worked rooms like that, you learn the rhythm. Speech, smirk, translation, silence, repeat. And you learn the shortcuts people use to remind you where they think you belong. Cole snapped his fingers without looking up. Sweetheart, more. Syra and I felt the snap land on my skin like a rubber band. You can't prove hurt, because the mark fades fast. I poured clean and walked away because I needed my paycheck more than I needed a scene. But disrespect has a way of multiplying when no one checks it, you know what I mean? So while the aide set another neat sentence on the table, Cole leaned toward Blake and said, "We could run this with a chatbot and get more engagement." Blake laughed like ceilings belonged to him, and for a second, I saw Rika's eyes change the way water changes when wind moves across it. I didn't plan to get involved. I never planned to get involved. It's not how you stay employed in a room where the chairs cost more than your car, but I grew up in Yokohama for 5 years, while my mom did embassy work, and Japanese is the first language that taught me respect is a posture before it's a word, that a bow is an angle of the heart as much as the spine. And when we moved back, everyone loved my fluency until they saw the face it came out of. Then it became trivia. I carried trays and I carried that. Cole kept going, he said, negotiating with a bonsai tree, and Blake added, beautiful, silent, older than it looks. Joke like a knife with a napkin over it, and I put the bottle down carefully, because sometimes glass is how you measure self-control. Then Rika said the sentence. Not to the men, not to the aide, not for translation. Soft, almost to the space between her and the table, a question. I heard the way you hear your name across a crowded train. Is there anyone here who can see me? And it walked up to the part of me that still believes rules keep good people safe and asked me to prove it. Everett's hand didn't land on my shoulder, but his rulebook did. Be invisible, don't get involved, do your job. And I walked toward the head of the table anyway, shoes clicking like a metronome that refused to slow. I bowed the way I was taught when I was little, not the dip they teach for customer service, the real thing. And when I straightened, I told her in Japanese that I was sorry for the disrespect, that silence in the face of this felt like betrayal, that if she allowed it, I could help. She touched my forearm lightly and said thank you for seeing me, and the room tilted. Blake smiled like he'd just been handed a new toy and said, "By all means, let's accelerate." The aide slid a leather folder toward me with the revised agreement, and I opened it because words have fingerprints, and my mother used to bring them home on her cuffs. I'm not a lawyer. I keep saying that because it matters. But I've proofread enough briefs on a wobbly kitchen table to know when a line looks like a gift and reads like a trap. I went to Section 6C and read it again until the shape of it showed. Post-merger intellectual property escrow with unilateral renegotiation rights. Which is a pretty way to say we can reorganize everything you built after you sign and you don't get a vote. And I said that out loud. Calm. Blake said standard language, I said standard for who, Cole said safeguard. In case the market pivots, like markets are weather systems, you can't be held responsible for, and I kept turning pages. Section 11. Non-compete so wide. It might as well be the sky, 12 years, no, starting a company, no advising, no teaching, no writing, no breathing, near robotics or AI. And I looked up and said, this doesn't just buy a company, it tries to erase the person who built it. That's the kind of line people call dramatic, until they realize it's a ledger entry, and the room went still the way rooms do before a fire alarm decides how loud it will be. Rika nodded to her aide, and he placed a small metal device on the table. Nothing flashy, just a rectangle that could have been a translator. He pressed a button, static, then Blake's voice like a mirror he didn't know was there. Cut the incentives, we'll absorb her execs, she'll never see the restructure coming. Cole's laugh after she lives in her own little world. The translator will fill the gaps. We can steer this, and if you've never watched Power hear itself played back in stereo, I'll tell you it looks like a grin backing off a cliff. I translated the essence because truth doesn't need choreography. I said they assumed you wouldn't understand and planned to hollow out what you built and sell the shell. Cole stood so fast, his knee hit the table, and he said, you can't record private meetings without consent. That's illegal. And I said, so is lying to shareholders, flat as a cutting board. Everett barreled in hot and hissed that I had left my station, inserted myself, that I was done here. He loves that word, done, like a stamp across your forehead. And I was ready to eat it because I know how the math usually works then. The vault door opened, and Malcolm Price walked in, like calm in a suit. Introduced himself from Innovation Capital, said they had a serious stake in Arizu's expansion, and told Everett the only issue tonight was that he'd tried to fire the only person in the room who acted with integrity. Rika spoke to me in Japanese for the first time in a full paragraph. It sounded like a clean wave, I answered. She took both my hands and nodded, and I turned to the table and said, Ms. Tanamori would like to offer me a role on her strategic team. Cultural liaison, executive aid oversight on U.S. partnerships. Malcolm added tuition-covered housing near the office salary. Matching value demonstrated, Cole made a noise like a scoff trying to be a cough. Blake said nothing because charm doesn't work on gravity. That's the twist. If you're keeping score, the moment the waitress people snapped at became the person who moved the needle. And yes, you know what I mean? It felt like oxygen after holding your breath underwater. The headlines did what headlines do, boards got nervous. Investors did math as fast as rumor. Blake stepped down to pursue other opportunities. Cole resigned for personal reasons. And the same folks who laughed like they owned the ceiling started chewing every bite like it had bones, yeah. That happened. I started at Arizu a month later, and it wasn't shiny. It was awake engineers who talked with their hands, lawyers who read like they'd been taught to think, before they argued a wall of sticky notes that looked like a mosaic of questions. And the first time my opinion wasn't a novelty, but a necessity, I almost laughed out loud, and then didn't because the moment felt like church. We built habits that turned into culture. Translate. The silence widened the circle. Write contracts where 6C is a seatbelt, not a crowbar, where 11 is growth, not a cage. And on good days, I could feel that dinner in my bones pushing me forward like wind at my back. The ending isn't fairy tale clean. I saw Blake at a coffee shop with a name that sounds like a poem. He recognized me and then didn't, which is a kind of talent. Cole landed somewhere with a glossy website and a 2-word mission statement that could be a weather report. But my mom picked up the phone when I called to say I wasn't waiting tables anymore, because I told the truth in a room that didn't want it. And she cried the kind of cry that sounds like relief first and joy second. When I replay that night, it's not the money that sticks, not the device or the offer, or even Everett's face when he realized the rulebook had turned to paper in the rain. It's that first sentence that wasn't for translation. Is there anyone here who can see me? And the way it hit the part of me that had learned to hide behind good service and good grades and good behavior, the part that wanted to be the bridge and not just the person carrying the tray across it. So let's open the floor, because I know some of you are already arguing with me in your head. Was I wrong to step in? Should I have kept my head down and trusted that the system would sort itself out? Is a secret recording always out of bounds? Do jokes with teeth count as strategy or just noise? Where's the line between respect and erasure, between being professional and being complicit? Tell me what you see. Tell me where you draw it. Tell me about the time someone saw you when everyone else looked past, or the time you stayed quiet and wish you hadn't, or the time you spoke and paid a price. If this story hit you anywhere, tender. Drop a comment, argue with me back, me up, push back. If you need to share it with someone who loves to hear themselves talk, and tell them to really listen for once. And if you want more stories that don't scream but still shake a room, subscribe, hit the bell, and bring a friend who needs to be seen.